When this whole project started, who plays bass, does vocals, plays keyboards as well, it's programming.
70% of the guitar stuff on that record doesn't sound like guitar. It sounds like a keyboard or some other weird instrument.
In the vast and intricate world of progressive rock, few names shine as brightly as Alex Lifeson. For over 4 decades, the Rush guitarist didn't just play, he reinvented what it meant to be a musician. His music wasn't about loudness or speed, it was about precision, emotion, and evolution. A man who blended classical discipline, jazz freedom, and hard rock energy into soundscapes that felt like journeys rather than songs. But behind that genius was a fiercely opinionated artist, one who had zero tolerance for mediocrity. Lifeson believed the guitar was more than an instrument. To him, it was a language of endless discovery, one that demanded respect, discipline, and a lifetime of learning. And when others treated it like a shortcut to fame or an accessory to rebellion, it genuinely angered him.
He played sax as well, but all his phrasing was like that, and his use of the vibrato arm.
He wasn't the kind of person to publicly call people out, but those who knew him said he had sharp, unfiltered opinions about other guitarists, especially those who, in his eyes, represented everything wrong with modern rock. He didn't just dislike certain players, he felt some were actively pulling rock music backward, away from artistry and into chaos. Today, we dive into that side of Alex Lifeson, the perfectionist, the purist, and the critic, to uncover the truth behind the guitarists who, according to many close to him, made his blood boil. From grunge icons to minimalist legends, these were the artists that clashed with everything Lifeson stood for musically and philosophically. Let's start with the most unexpected one of all. Coming in at number 6, Kurt Cobain. For fans of rock, this is where two completely different worlds collide. Progressive rock versus grunge. On one side, you had Rush, known for musical complexity, time signatures that defied logic, and a relentless pursuit of perfection. On the other, Nirvana, raw, loud, emotional, and deliberately unpolished. To Lifeson, Cobain symbolized something he simply couldn't understand, the celebration of imperfection. Where Alex spent years perfecting technique, mastering theory, and crafting intricate compositions, Cobain intentionally stripped music down to its bones. 3 chords, a scream, and emotion. According to music journalist Michael Azarad, Lifeson once remarked to fellow musicians that Kurt represents everything wrong with rock's anti-intellectual movement. He's made musical incompetence into a virtue and convinced an entire generation that not knowing your instrument makes you authentic. That statement sums up their philosophical clash perfectly. While Lifeson believed every musician should strive for mastery, Cobain believed the opposite, that raw honesty mattered more than technical perfection. To him, complexity could become a wall between artist and listener. For Lifeson, that kind of thinking wasn't just misguided, it was dangerous. It told young musicians that effort didn't matter, that learning and discipline somehow made you fake. The two never had a public feud, but industry insiders say there was a famous event in the early 1990s when grunge completely overtook progressive rock.
Oh my love, blindness.
At an award gathering celebrating this new wave of authentic rock, Lifeson reportedly grew visibly irritated. Watching critics hail simplicity as genius made him feel that years of hard work were being dismissed. One witness claimed he muttered under his breath, "They're celebrating the death of musical ambition and calling it authenticity." To him, Nirvana's rise represented something deeper, not just a shift in style, but a cultural shift away from artistry toward rebellion without purpose.
It was very difficult to get inspired or motivated to play.
Cobain, he felt, had turned music into what he once called willful ignorance disguised as artistic integrity. Next on the list, The Edge from U2. Now, on the surface, The Edge and Lifeson seem to have more in common. Both were innovators who built their band's sound from the ground up. But for Lifeson, The Edge's approach was the opposite of true guitar craftsmanship. Where Lifeson spent decades refining scales, chords, and phrasing, The Edge focused on effects, echo, delay, reverb, layering textures instead of technical runs. To fans, The Edge's sound was ethereal, emotional, and iconic. But to Lifeson, it was smoke and mirrors. According to one editor from Guitar Player magazine, Lifson once told session musicians that the edge hides behind pedals instead of learning how to truly play. Real innovation comes from composition and technique, not how many delay units you can chain together. For Lifson, technology was a tool, not a crutch. He respected creativity, but he believed every note should come from the hands, not the pedals. To him, the edge represented the growing trend of guitarists focusing more on effects than actual playing. The tension reportedly came to light during a major guitar clinic where both were invited to perform. While the Edge spent most of his time demonstrating his effects setup, Lifson quietly commented to someone nearby, "This is what happens when people confuse sound design with musicianship. It wasn't about ego, it was about principle." Lifson felt that modern players were abandoning the art of playing in favor of the art of programming, and in his eyes that wasn't evolution, it was decay. He supposedly described that kind of playing as button pushing for people who don't want to practice scales. To him, the Edge had turned music into an engineering experiment, while Lifson believed music should be a direct reflection of human touch. Fingers on strings, emotion translated into motion. And then came the third guitarist who reportedly drove him mad in a completely different way, Malcolm Young of AC/DC. This clash was pure philosophy. Lifson represented musical complexity, chord changes, time shifts, and composition. Malcolm Young represented minimalism, raw rhythm, 3 chords, and no unnecessary movement. For Malcolm, rock wasn't meant to be complicated. It was about feel, groove, and power. His guitar lines were simple but unforgettable. That was his magic. But for Lifson, it felt like the opposite of evolution.
80% of the guitar stuff on that record doesn't sound like guitar. It sounds like a keyboard or some other weird instrument.
According to rock journalist Murray Engelhart, Lifson once told fellow musicians, "Malcolm has made limitation into a religion." He's proud of playing the same 3 chords for decades when music should be about exploration and growth. It wasn't personal, it was ideological. While AC/DC stuck to their signature formula year after year, Lifeson was experimenting with jazz influences, classical harmonies, and multi-layered arrangements. He couldn't stand the idea of celebrating musical stagnation. One story goes that during an industry awards night in the 1980s, AC/DC was being honored for staying true to their raw sound. Lifeson reportedly turned to his manager and said, "They're celebrating musical laziness and calling it purity." Real rock should push boundaries, not build fences around them. In his eyes, Malcolm Young symbolized the comfort zone, the refusal to evolve. Lifeson wasn't angry at success. He was frustrated by what that success represented. To him, it sent the message that effort and experimentation didn't matter as long as the formula sold records. He once said in an interview that music isn't meant to stay still, it's supposed to keep becoming something new. And that was the foundation of his frustration. For Alex Lifeson, the guitar wasn't just about playing, it was about the idea of progress, that no matter how great you become, there's always a new layer to uncover. He couldn't accept musicians who treated it as a finished product rather than a lifelong pursuit. To outsiders, it might sound like arrogance, but to those who truly understand musicianship, it's passion. The kind of passion that pushes artists to the edge of madness in search of perfection. In truth, Lifeson never hated these guitarists as people. What he despised was what they stood for in his eyes: comfort, complacency, and a rejection of musical discipline. He came from a generation that believed music was sacred. Every note mattered, every progression told a story, and every song was an opportunity to create something no one had ever heard before. Watching that philosophy replaced by good enough rock stars must have felt like watching art itself being simplified for mass consumption. Alex Lifeson lived by a creed that music must evolve, that artists must keep learning, and that passion without purpose is just noise. To him, the guitar wasn't about fame or rebellion. It was about respect for the craft, for the audience, and for the instrument itself. So when he looked at players like Cobain, The Edge, or Malcolm Young, he wasn't just criticizing them. He was mourning what he felt rock had lost: ambition. And maybe that's the real heart of it all. Not anger, not jealousy, but grief for an era when musicians fought to outdo themselves, not just to fit into a trend. Because for Alex Lifeson, being a guitarist was never about keeping up, it was about pushing forward. Third on the list, Johnny Ramone, the clash of discipline versus defiance. Sliding into number 3 is one of the most ideologically charged feuds in rock history, a battle not over fame or ego, but over what music itself should stand for. Johnny Ramone, the unrelenting rhythm guitarist of the Ramones, became, according to rock historians, Alex Lifeson's most despised rival, not because of personal insults or public drama, but because Johnny represented everything Lifeson believed was destroying the art of guitar playing. The story begins in the mid-1970s, when punk rock erupted like a musical revolution. It was raw, stripped down, and furious, a deliberate rebellion against the elaborate and intellectual world of progressive rock. At that time, Rush was mastering complex compositions, odd time signatures, and classical influences. On the other hand, the Ramones were breaking all the rules: 3 chords, no solos, no pretension, just attitude and distortion. According to punk historian Legs McNeil, Lifeson once told Canadian journalists that Johnny Ramone had turned musical incompetence into a movement. For Lifeson, that wasn't just criticism, it was heartbreak. He had dedicated his entire life to learning, studying, and expanding what the guitar could express. His work was built on theory, discipline, and innovation. But punk's rise made it look like effort no longer mattered, like being good at your instrument had become a crime. What infuriated him most was Johnny's philosophy of anti-musicianship. The Ramones wore their simplicity like a badge of honor. Their 3-chord anthems were a statement: you don't need to be good to make good music. To millions of fans, that message was liberating. But to Lifeson, who saw music as a lifelong craft, it felt like vandalism against art itself. While Alex was blending classical training, jazz influences, and complex compositional layers, Johnny Ramone was achieving cult status by tearing all that down, proving that you didn't need to read music or master technique to change rock history. For Lifeson, it wasn't rebellion, it was regression. Their Cold War reportedly came to a boiling point in 1977 at a music industry conference in New York, where punk's rise was being debated. Witnesses claim Lifeson made a biting remark about musicians who confuse rebellion with incompetence. When Johnny's name came up, things turned tense. Punk icons defended him, calling him the true face of rock's freedom. Lifeson, according to insiders, left fuming. At its core, their feud wasn't personal, it was philosophical. Johnny Ramone represented a movement that glorified rawness over refinement, while Alex Lifeson represented the idea that discipline and study didn't kill creativity, they elevated it. For Lifeson, punk was not revolution, it was the deliberate celebration of ignorance. And in his eyes, Johnny Ramone wasn't just a guitarist, he was the symbol of everything he believed rock was losing. Number 2/sliding into number 2 is the clash that defined guitar culture in the late 1980s, the battle between progressive innovation and blues rock traditionalism. Enter Slash, the top hat wearing guitar hero of Guns N' Roses, whose raw blues-based sound ruled MTV, record charts, and every teenager's wall poster. To millions, Slash revived the spirit of classic rock. But to Alex Lifeson, he was dragging it backward. The feud reportedly began when Guns N' Roses exploded onto the global stage. Their debut album, Appetite for Destruction, wasn't just a hit, it was an earthquake. Critics called Slash the reincarnation of 1970s rock gods. But Lifeson, according to Guitar World editor Brad Talinsky, saw something different. He reportedly told session musicians, Slash is playing the same blues licks that were tired 20 years ago, and everyone calls him innovative. Real evolution means moving forward, not retreating into classic rock museum pieces. To understand the tension, you have to understand what both men stood for.
Right. For years. We wrote so many songs in here. You slept on that couch. Memories. And after 2015, there was a very quiet and a sad period for us. And when I think back to us doing the tribute concerts for Taylor Hawkins, we went out on stage and played our songs, first time in a long time. There was a special feeling attached to that. Bittersweet. Because of obvious reasons.
Lifson had spent decades crafting a new musical language. Rush was about experimentation, shifting time signatures, jazz fusion elements, and sonic storytelling. Every album felt like a journey into uncharted space. Slash, meanwhile, embraced the opposite philosophy: soul over science, feel over formula. He said, "If it feels good, it's right. I don't need theory to tell me that." That single sentence summarized everything Lifeson rejected. The tension reportedly reached its peak during a 1988 Guitar Magazine feature, where Slash dismissed progressive rock as pretentious wankery. Industry insiders say Lifeson was livid. That wasn't just a jab, it was a worldview. For Lifeson, Slash represented comfort, the safety of familiar blues scales repeated endlessly. It wasn't about artistic growth. It was about feeding audiences what they already loved, and that, in Lifeson's mind, was the death of progress. He reportedly referred to Slash's style as blues rock karaoke, technically correct, but artistically stagnant. Slash, of course, didn't care. He wasn't chasing complexity, he was chasing emotion. His solos were fire, not formulas. But for Alex, the problem wasn't Slash's talent, it was his influence. Millions of young guitarists started copying Slash's sound, flooding the world with the same pentatonic solos, the same vintage tones, the same comfort zone. To Lifeson, that wasn't music evolving. It was music looping endlessly in nostalgia. He saw the 1980s guitar scene turning into what he allegedly called comfort food for people afraid of challenge. And to him, Slash was the poster child of that mindset. A man whose success convinced the world that progress was optional. Their feud wasn't about personal animosity, it was a philosophical standoff. Should music honor the past or build the future? For Lifeson, the answer was clear, and Slash was standing on the wrong side of history. Number 1, Angus Young. And finally, taking the top spot in our countdown, the feud that reportedly shattered Alex Lifson's faith in guitar playing's artistic potential. Angus Young, the electrifying schoolboy of AC/DC, and, according to Lifson, the living embodiment of rock's anti-intellectual decay. The roots of their tension stretch back to the 1970s, when both bands were climbing toward legendary status. Rush was redefining progressive rock, while AC/DC was perfecting stripped-down high-voltage riffing. But beneath the surface of respect lay deep creative resentment. According to rock journalist Clinton Walker, Lifeson once told fellow musicians, "Angus has turned musical limitation into a bloody circus act. He's made ignorance entertaining and convinced audiences that refusing to grow as a musician is somehow more authentic than actually developing your craft." That line summed up everything Lifeson felt about Angus and about the direction rock was taking. While Rush albums like Hemispheres and Moving Pictures were pushing the technical boundaries of rock composition, AC/DC was proudly doing the opposite, keeping it simple, raw, and loud. To fans, that was the magic. To Lifeson, it was a mockery. What made things worse was Angus's open dismissal of progressive rock. He once joked in an interview that prog music was for people who think too much. To the average fan, it was just banter. But for Lifeson, it cut deep. He'd spent his career proving that thinking in music mattered, that technical mastery and emotional storytelling could coexist. Insiders claim that moment was the final straw. Lifeson reportedly told confidants that Angus had made a career out of celebrating everything wrong with rock guitar. He's turned stagnation into entertainment for people afraid of artistic challenge. That wasn't just bitterness, it was despair. He saw Angus Young as the ultimate corruption of rock's creative soul, proof that technical limitation, packaged with charisma and showmanship, could outperform genuine artistic effort. And in many ways, that realization broke him. For a man who believed the guitar was a tool for endless exploration, watching audiences worship the same 3 chords year after year was devastating. Angus's success to him symbolized the triumph of spectacle over substance, a circus act over a craft. But here's the twist. Over time, even Lifeson softened. In later interviews, he acknowledged that not everyone needs to play in 7/8 to make good music. Maybe, deep down, he realized that music isn't a competition between knowledge and feeling, it's a conversation between them. Still, the tension between their philosophies remains one of the most fascinating divides in rock history. Angus Young's raw simplicity versus Alex Lifeson's intricate progressivism. Two men who changed music in completely opposite ways. So there you have it, the 6 guitarists who, according to legend, made Alex Lifeson's progressive blood boil. But here's the real question. Was he wrong? Was Lifeson a frustrated purist clinging to complexity? Or was he one of the last defenders of artistry in a world that started celebrating simplicity over skill? His rivalries with these guitarists weren't just about guitar strings or solos. They were about values, about what music should be, effortless emotion or disciplined creation, ignorance as freedom or mastery as power. In the end, that's what makes Alex Lifeson's story so compelling. It's not just a list of feuds, it's the ongoing fight for the soul of rock itself. Which side are you on?
Always have a part of the show that's a tribute to Neil and his memory of him and everything that he was to us. And it's going to be beautiful to be able to celebrate him every single night.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is going to be fun.
Well, I felt exactly the same.
There's one other decision that is coming.
I think it's great. I think having a little time together at the front of the stage will be a lot of fun.
It'll be great.
It will be very liberating for you, and we can start working on the dance routines that we wanted to do for so long. So it's amazing. This is going to be great. Just give me a hug.
Drop your thoughts below. Hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the rivalries that shaped rock history.